Okay, so while we are waiting, let's get started. The question by Rajiv Sethi. Will drastic reduction in medical interventions and encouragement of sensible lifestyles be better for health of humanity? Who wants to take that? Okay. We need a mic. We need one mic.
It's a very good question. I do think that it will a good lifestyle and reduction in medical intervention will help. I may not have many friends in the medical community after I say this, but the way physicians are rewarded, the model is wrong. We get paid to do procedures. So there is of course going to be a bias to do more and more procedures. You hear in news, corporate hospitals have revenue models and so on and so forth. Don't know how much of that is true because I haven't had any association yet. But I do think that a good lifestyle should always come first. And then,
So I had a question for Dr. Malpani. So what made you write this book?
My wife's not here, no? So at least, because at least, anyway, so I think I'll stick to the truth. I am a second generation doctor, and I think doctors are no longer held in the high regard which they used to. And I think that's sad. Because unless you can trust your doctor, when you fall sick, you're not going to get better. Let's be honest about it. And if all the time in your mind you always suspect, is he getting a cut, is he getting a kickback, is he ordering the test because it's in his best interest rather than my best interest, and you have that doubt and suspicion in your mind all the time, it's not good for the doctor and it's not good for the patient. And I think partly we as doctors in the medical profession are to blame for the sad state of affairs. We cannot just wash our hands of the responsibility. And when I fall sick, I want to have a doctor whom I can trust. And whatever you do, you're never going to be able to create a sufficient number of doctors. There's always going to be a disproportionate amount of patients. That's always going to be true. Doctors are going to be busy people. We need to bridge the gap between doctors and patients. And I think patient advocates are ideally positioned to be able to do that. I think they have the time, they have the energy, they have the inclination, they have that much at stake that they're willing to do it. So there's some things which I think doctors do well. There are some things which I think patient advocates do better, and every good doctor will accept the fact, and it's in my best interest actually, to have someone in the family who can be a patient advocate, who will then be able to explain to the patient, so it saves me time, and anytime there is a communication gap occurring, this particular person will be able to fill it. And one thing I will say, one of the reasons I write the books is because I learned so much while writing them. I'm an IVF specialist. It's a very niche, it's a very narrow area. But there's so much happening in the medical profession and there's so much which is not right. And I think this can add a healing touch.
Now can you give us the answer since Anjali is not here?
Yeah, it gives me a chance to spend time on my computer so I don't have to do all the other stuff which Anjali wants me to do. It's a valid excuse.
Now we know. Shouldn't there be a fixed fee structure for people in the legal profession, like for the doctors, as is practiced in some of the social health care schemes?
I'm happy to answer that. And there is always going to be a sliding scale. I think it's silly to expect all the 5 fingers are not going to be the same. I think that's fine. And I think whatever anyone wants to charge, that's fine too, provided he's open and transparent about it. So there's no sticker shock afterwards. It shouldn't be, yes, appendix का खर्चा 30,000 होगा और उसके बाद anesthetist का 10,000 होगा, hospital में रहने का 10,000 होगा. So by the time you come out of it, your bill actually ends up to 1 lakh. And I think one of the things we're trying to propagate is that every doctor should have their own website. You have to be transparent, you have to be open. And the moment you start putting up a price list on your website, then there is this much less scope for people complaining afterwards, you didn't tell me how much the cost of this is going to be. So I agree with you, it's a problem, but I think the whole point of this is we shouldn't be looking for problems, we should be looking for solutions. And there are enough solutions, people are sensible, people are smart, and we're all on the same side, let's not forget that.
I will hand over to Dr. Malpani, he'll moderate this session, and there are a few more slips which you all have sent in, which we'll take up for answering.
So that's interesting. How can advocates be involved in patient advocacy? And is there any training conducted for it? And can any practicing lawyer participate in patient advocacy? If there's anyone who would like to answer that question, or I'm happy to answer it. You know, I think the word advocacy itself is a very strong word. It's a very powerful word. I think we think of lawyers in a very adversarial fashion, but actually that's not true. A lawyer or an advocate is someone who stands up for you. The great thing about lawyers being involved in patient advocacy is because they have the professional training to be able to talk to the client, understand the client's pain points, and then transmute them in a fashion as Dheeraj said so well, so that the judge can understand. And that's exactly what you don't need to be a lawyer to be a patient advocate. You don't need to be a family physician or a doctor either to be a patient advocate. You just need to be intelligent, and you need to have love and care and compassion for the person whom you're taking care of, as Sunita so rightly pointed out. And if you do both of these things well, I think anyone can be a patient advocate. Whether you have an LLB or whether you have an MBBS is not important. Okay, this we're going to pass down. What, according to all the speakers, are the basic skills required other than understanding of his relative or friend to handle both points of view? And I presume both points of view is the patient's point of view and the doctor's point of view.
I think the couple of presenters very clearly mentioned these points. I think we are talking here about emotions, and so apart from the physical well-being, it's also the mental well-being. So the three things that I gathered again was compassion. I think it's one very critical factor. Second is listening. I think listening is such an the difference between hearing and listening is such a vast gap. It's not just about hearing someone, but listening it from within. So I think that would be another critical factor. And having empathy towards the subject is, I think, critical to this, so that you have, in both ways, you have more clarity and you kind of tune with each other much better.
I think understanding of yourself, like I mentioned, believer or doubter, and I make joke about it, but my father is a doubter, my mom is a believer. My mother was diagnosed with diabetes 4 years back, and she wanted to know each and everything she could do. She gets frazzled if her sugars are 20 points plus minus. On the other hand, my dad doesn't exercise, he eats whatever he wants. He would put ambi haldi for even cellulitis when you clearly need IV antibiotics. So it's very important, and I think knowing what that person would expect. So would it be right on my part to expose or expect my dad to go through interventions that may or may not have positive result? So the way I provide care, I have to personalize or customize for each of them. And that's a distinct understanding I think a patient and patient advocates need to share.
I think what they expressed is perfectly right. What could be a plus over and above that is maybe a little more knowledge on specific clinical front, to help understanding, translating. That will be an added plus, because these are essential points. I think also knowledge about the whole administrative systems within the hospital, how hospitals run, how hospital to payer, that is insurance interaction goes. Awareness of these things will also help, because it's a connected system, it's not an isolated system.
I think there's no formal training that's required, because then it just becomes another profession. I just think if people are reasonable, that's good enough.
I think all of us have been patient advocates, whether we called ourselves patient advocates or not. Anyone who's a parent, when your child falls sick, obviously you act as an advocate. The reason we wrote the book is just to explain that you can act as a constructive bridge between the patient and the doctor. And some doctors may take offense, I'm not saying that's not likely to happen, but most doctors will appreciate the fact that there is someone within the family who's willing to take the responsibility. Sometimes the patient gets emotionally very upset, sometimes you tell a patient something, they're too stressed out, they forget half of what you tell them, things get distorted. Whereas when you have a patient advocate, you understand that there's someone who's cool, who's calm, who's collected, and who's listening to what you have to say, and will then be able to translate it in terms which the patient will then be able to follow.
Questions are over?
Yes.
One question I want to ask. Will your book help persons to become a patient secretary?
Yes, the book has a list of all the things, skills which a patient advocate requires, and if the patient advocate doesn't have those skills, what he needs to acquire those skills. Suppose there's a conflict between the doctor and the patient, then how does the patient advocate negotiate? How does he mediate? How does he make sure that tempers don't rise? How does he make sure that things don't go out of hand? So yes, of course there is this listing. I think a lot of this is really applied common sense. You know, most of us do this informally anyway, and the book just helps to systematize it and make it a little more formal.
Another question. Do you think that there should be a citizen's charter for this profession?
Of course. I fully agree. You know, it's best for everyone. See, there are good doctors will always be much happier when things like this happen because everyone's much more open and transparent and the patient understands what is expected of the doctor. Would you agree with that?
I agree completely.
There are sometimes conflicting objectives, both may be important. A doctor, if he gives more time to the patient, it's very good for the patient. And a doctor doesn't want to miss his other patients, and if he's become popular, he'll start giving lesser time to each patient. Now a surgeon, however good he is, it always does good to the patient if the doctor has met him before the surgery, and such practices. So I feel it somewhat not predictable, like one of your speaker, Dr. Bhavan, he may not be here right now. If he says this doctor could predict he'll live for 2 years, this doctor, if he treats him, he'll live for 4 months. I think such predictability is only with God. No one else can. But every doctor, however successful he is, he has to practice these good things. So you don't have a justification. So somewhere that if you do 3 surgeries a day, but you could be doing 7 also, are you missing the opportunity of another 4? Where do you strike these balance as a doctor?
So one of wise man on panel here told me that stuck with me is every patient gets the doctor he deserves and every doctor gets the patient he deserves.
That's good.
So that's quoting Dr. Malpani, and it stuck with me. So one of the things that's skewed I think in patients' minds is that busy waiting areas equivalent to a good doctor. That needs to be disconnected. So one of the analogies is are you a person who likes Tirupati Darshan, or are you a person who likes to go in a small temple, sit down and pray and talk to God? So that's a very raw analogy, but
what I was coming at, can we tell the doctor should not do less than this? See, he cannot do a surgery if he's not met his patient before the surgery.
So,
can such...
I think lawyers are far worse than that because they will deliberately book 5 cases and not turn up in court. I don't think you can tell people to do anything. That's the reality. You can tell them to do what you like. Whether they'll do it or not is a completely different issue. Having said that, everything you're saying is absolutely right. But like I said before, ultimately the only reason doctors get away with bad behavior is because patients allow them to get away with it. If beyond a particular point a patient signed up for surgery, he had expectations from his surgeon that he will meet me pre-operatively, and if the surgeon does not, he'll say, fine, cancel my surgery, I'm not willing to go ahead for the surgery. The sad reality is patients feel powerless, they feel helpless, and they pretty much accept whatever doctors give. And I think that's one of the reasons why that happens, and the doctor's behavior also becomes progressively worse over a period of time. And that's why they start behaving in ways which I don't think are fair at all. I agree. Do you have solutions?
This is less of a solution, more of a discussion. Actually, a few days back, this was what my daughter's pediatrician was telling me, that he was very disappointed with the fact that the hospital that he had just joined was not becoming bigger than it can become, because there were a lot of other doctors who were bringing in this, their referral fees into the picture, and the hospital needed something at this particular moment to, get good doctors, and they couldn't. I mean, this was the pediatrician's opinion, and I agree with it completely. So if any doctors have an issue with what I'm saying, please feel free to tell me. He was pretty blunt about the fact that there are a lot of doctors who want to make a lot more money, and that's coming to your point. Will this surgeon be willing to do those 3 surgeries today instead of the 7, so that he can actually spend time with the patient? And what my viewpoint here is, be reasonable. If you think that as a surgeon you need to spend time with the patient, which if that is the way it should be, then that's the way it should be. If you need to spend time with the patient and because of that you're going to do 3 surgeries less, then that's how it should be, because that's the only thing that you can do to make sure you do your job right. And if you're not able to do something to do your job right, then you shouldn't do it that way. If you need to spend half an hour extra with a patient so that you can do your job right, then you should spend half an hour extra with your patient. And because of that, if you're going to make a little less money and you think you deserve more money, hike your prices. Be transparent about it, demand more, good patients will pay you for it. That's what I think.
Can I say something, please?
Sure.
Can we say that patient advocacy could be an excellent volunteering opportunity for retirees?
Yes.
No, absolutely, and there is such a big need. So for example, within a hospital setting, I'll tell you one thing, I think all religions teach the same thing, that the best way of helping yourself is to help someone else. And I think the more you volunteer as a patient advocate, when you fall sick, you will have a much better understanding of what to expect from the doctor. So volunteer for selfish reasons. But of course, doctors will be extremely happy. He pointed out that slide from, let's say, JJ Hospital or KM Hospital. And it's heartbreaking that, you have 40 patients waiting to see you. You have this one patient, but he can't understand what you want to tell him. And you can't spend any more time on him. And if we had people who were willing to help out, it would make the doctor's life a lot more easier, because that patient could then spend enough time asking that volunteer enough questions. Imagine the amount of sense of satisfaction and gratification which the volunteer would get, I actually do, and which the patient is then happy with. I'm sorry, yes.
My name is Dr. Ramesh Kathuria. I have retired as Executive Health Officer of the BMC, and I was also Director of some World Bank aided projects in Mumbai. Number one is that the Government of India had started an outreach services scheme, and the unit of that outreach services scheme is a health post. And this health post is supposed to be doing all the preventive work, not a general practitioner and not a clinician. And I have started 150 health centers in Mumbai, and these health centers, they have got about 20 women voluntary health workers, and they are the best people who can take part in advocacy. If we can get a chance in training them in any way, or attending a seminar like this for them, they would be the best people, the best advocates for health. Number two is that regarding the TB patient and the MDR TB and the multi-drug resistant TB, the social problem is that the TB treatment earlier at least was so long, and the people are so poor, they don't even have the bus fare to go to the RDTB hospital. And suppose the mother is having TB, the daughter-in-law or anybody else is not even willing to pay the bus fare, and they don't have eaten sufficient food to be able to take those strong medicines, and therefore they discontinue the medicine. In spite of whatever advocacy you may do, then they get admitted in TB hospital, and sometimes they are so demotivated that they jump from the 4th floor of the hospital and die. You must have read in the papers number of times that people die like that. The next point I want to make is that advocacy is not only always independent. People advocate for commercial reasons. Somebody advised me to take injection Lantus for no reason, because the injection cost 2,000.
I wouldn't call that advocacy. So but I think
I agree. You may call, okay, it may be on the bottom line, but a very senior doctor advises me to take Lantus injection just because it is very costly. And this company, the drug company, follows me up every now and then. Are you taking Lantus?
So I'm actually really happy to listen to what you have.
And the last point I want to make, sir, is that it is not possible probably for the top surgeon who is operating to do any advocacy or to advise or to answer all the questions. In fact, I learned as a student that I don't know whether the name of the surgeon may be Denton Cooley or somebody else, and there are 8 operation rooms in US, and he has never seen the face of the patient. He just goes on operating from one to another room, but his assistants, but his junior most assistant, they should.
So, you know,
Thank you.
it's not necessary that the doctor himself, as long as he has a system and a process in place that the patient's needs are being met, and in the US a lot of the time this will be done by nurses. I think the point about the community workers serving as advocates is excellent, and it's especially within rural areas where the doctors don't want to go themselves, and very honestly doctors can't be bothered. I remember someone said there are 5 missing E's in medical education. E is for ethics, doctors aren't taught ethics. E is for epidemiology, which is community medicine, which, you know, ठीक है, मेरे सामने जो patient है मैं उसकी देखभाल करूँगा. E is for economics. We're not taught, can the patient afford the medicine or not afford the medicine? So that I fully agree with you, but just because these are deficiencies, don't look upon them as problems, look upon them as opportunities which can be fixed. And we can all be part of the system in fixing it, and I think that's where patient advocacy has such a big role to play.
There are social workers in municipal hospitals, no? All hospitals have one.
Yes, all municipal hospitals have a department of medicals, but they're so overworked and they're so overstretched, and their primary role is financial aid. But there's so much more which can be done. So I'm extremely happy, you know, that even, I'll tell you one thing, if as a result of this conference, even if there is one additional patient who gets the benefit of one additional patient advocate, I will be more than happy, and all the time and effort which we put in writing the book and having the conference will be more than happily paid for.
I think we need to take this conference beyond this what you mentioned, because
you know, this is on the web, we have a webinar, we have technology partners like Plus 91, but it's just a small step. As he said, you know, Hegdewar Hospital has already been doing it. So how can we propagate and popularize? And that's where the community comes in. Don't forget, for every one doctor, there are 1,000 patients, there are 1,000 citizens. And it's actually the responsibility of the 999 other citizens, rather than to be dependent on the doctor, to then make sure that they can leverage the doctor's efficiency so the doctor can do a better job. And I think that's where the technology can come in, Aniruddha.
Side effect of medicines. Doctors generally don't explain to the patients what the side effects are. I know the doctors are busy, but can there not be some specialized staff in the paramedics who should explain to the patients what the side effects are, and if at all they come up, what they should do?
I guess partly that's where the technology can start coming in, as someone pointed out, is that here's your prescription, and if you SMS this particular number, we will send you more information about the side effects, so that even if it doesn't actually eat up the doctor's time, we can use technology cleverly to make sure the patient gets the information he needs. Of course, that needs to be done, no question about it.
Well, it's a good point to bring in the technology there, but one thing I'll be very frank about, patients should ask for this. And I can tell you this, if the patients ask for this and the doctors don't answer it twice or thrice, the fourth time the doctor is going to definitely, probably just out of shame, go and look it up and be able to tell the next patient. But patients should ask for this.
I think all this information is organized. I mean, it's available. It's just that technology will facilitate reaching that information to the patient a little better.
That is more technical, you know, it will be written in such fine print and
That's
all.
what I'm
can say when you buy from the chemist shop, you can have some paper inside and you'll find it.
No,
This is something that has to be told more personally, is what I think.
Correct. I'm not saying.
See, when you're, it's a dangerous thing now, what they pop up inside. Yeah. It may look very innocuous and it's easy to administer, but what it can do inside your system, and it's a life you're playing with.
Correct.
And what all it does, you know, swelling of your feet and this and that and all that, and causing more harm than the good it did. You know, let it be forewarned in the good words of the same doctor, so that he takes it seriously, rather than see a side where if he got the time he saw it and all.
Correct. Technology can never ever eliminate the role of a real human being in terms of being patient advocate.
No medicine that doesn't have serious side effects. So let doctor think, like Kanubhai said, let him think it's my bound duty to tell with every medicine I'm giving, I'm also telling you what is the side effect.
No, doctors are not saying previous prescriptions, they are continuing the same medicine.
There is one thing I would like to add here, that is, a lot of people are saying, make this a rule for the doctor. Make this a rule for the doctor. If you want to make rules for the doctor, it's going to happen after 20 years. Because you're going to have to teach it's not possible to do it. So, when we're talking about technology being brought into the picture, it's actually being brought into the picture at specific points. One side that I definitely want to make is patients should ask, because any doctor is going to then want to know, because eventually he doesn't want to feel like a guy who doesn't know something. The second thing is that the technology can definitely become something which is an enabler to not recommending something which can cause those issues you're talking about. Of course, let's try to be cool, and we should know this, that there are new drugs being manufactured which actually can go inside the body, and once inside the body they can actually decide whether they want to be, dissolved or not. There are these things also being made, but that's it. That's where technology is going to come in the future too.
Sir, I am coming from a tribal and a rural area where we don't have so much technological facilities. What I want to say about side effects is, please all of you can listen. When a patient asks me, many times you have to prescribe steroids. As a part of, I have been practicing orthopedic, I have been practicing general surgery. So in rheumatology we have to prescribe, in spine we have to prescribe. So when a patient asks me, sir, whether this contains steroids, I say yes, it contains. So he'll ask me whether there are side effects. I tell him that there are side effects of everything. The side effect of eating chapati, eating rice, eating sugar, taking tea, walking on the road, even coming to a doctor, and better rather coming to a doctor like me, there are side effects. So you have to find out, you have to balance. We do not walk on the road. You will not drink water because water can cause diarrhea. You will not go to the well because somebody can commit suicide. You will not dig any well. There has to be. But one has to decide, the doctor has to decide the balance, whether it is going to benefit you. And then under supervision, there are side effects, I understand. Diclofenac. Every day in and day out, we have been prescribing diclofenac. But we have to balance. In which case, what amount, how long. So the patient should be, the only problem is with the communication. He has to be explained. I tell you, I don't know how many doctors are here. I have only 2-3 requests. One is, tailor you a prescription according to his pocket. Pfizer sells clopidogrel in 110 rupees. My company sells in 4 rupees. Why should I write Pfizer's? That is the point. वो सोना नहीं डालता और ये मिट्टी की नहीं बना रहा है गोली, पर ये तो देश बिकाऊ है. Everyone is a sellable commodity. सरकार सबको परमिशन देती है कि तू भी लूट, तू भी दान कर. Number 2, a doctor has always to be first kind. He must be kind. Then he should be rational, then scientific, and then academician. And third is, every doctor has to work as a health educator first. Then he is a doctor, then he is a super specialist, or then he is anything. He is a social worker and health educator. These are my 3 requests to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll take 2 more questions, last 2 questions, and then the speakers will also be there joining for lunch, so you can continue the conversations there. Yes. And the second one here. Oh, sorry, there's one already there. Yes. No, 1 minute. Next. 3, yeah. Yeah. So 1, 2, and 3.
Sorry. It's on.
Yeah, just speak into it.
Yeah. Okay. This is the lack of technology. Anyway, what I was saying is I'm a supporter of technology. But someone just said that technology can never replace human communication. And therefore, some of these social media are actually preventing people from talking to each other because everything is on the thing. Now, this doesn't mean that in itself it is bad. The way it is used is not this thing. But advocating it as sort of panacea for everything is just not workable. you still have to have people-to-people contact. And that is where the family physician or what we are talking about, advocate or anything comes in. And we need to use this as a supportive thing, not as a, as an accessory, not as the prime method of this. One of the things is,
So, in the interest of time, what's the question for the panel? Can you please expedite it?
No, this is a question about, not a question, is a comment on this. I'm making a comment on.
So, can you fast track it? Because I want to make sure that we stay on time.
That will be, sure, I'll do that. I just need to complete what I'm saying, if it is okay.
30 seconds.
Yeah. All I'm saying is that we need to use this as many of the things that are on social media may not be competent to discuss. A diabetic group may not have the competence to talk about this. Therefore, we need also professional intervention.
Okay, thank you.
Can I take that? Can I take that quickly? When I said that it cannot replace human being, because the technology cannot enable compassion and other things from that perspective, right? But the point that you're making next is that, yes, you're saying that the technology has to be also controlled. There has to be a regulatory mechanism on that. And that's why I said that we must involve all the stakeholders. It cannot go only in one direction, because technology will make it faster, more efficient, but we need to know the direction in which it's going. Yeah?
I have a totally different take to this. For me, social media, as you're talking about, is not even a regulator, it's not even a platform, it's just a medium. For example, you can't say that the phone destroyed the communication. It did not. It actually was just a medium through which people who are far away can talk. And what social media does is it adds a way in which the phone can actually become something else. That's it. I don't believe there should be any regulation. I don't believe there should be any person sitting there to teach people how to do it. People are smart enough. When they use something and they feel that something benefits them, they learn themselves. I usually believe that if we're going to have you might have 1,000 ideas, only those ideas which actually most people find useful will emerge. So if social media does not end up benefiting people, it will be a failure, for sure.
Yeah, question here.
It is a combination that we don't get everything.
Okay, I'll just make a very short comment, and this is in response to what Mr. Nilani said, that, doctors, you can't make rules for them and you can't make them, learn, it will take 20 years or so. I'm just going to propose a very simple one-step exercise for doctors when we are medical students that can ensure that we are more empathetic and we end up becoming better counselors. And this is not just my original idea, but it's already been done in some places, in one school in New York. You get doctors to be patients for one day. And there is an exercise done by New York Medical School where medical students, when they're in medical school, have to play the role of a patient. They themselves stand in the OPD, get the forms filled, get admitted, lie on the same bed, while other medical students come and tap on their abdomen, strip them naked, for them to get a feel of how it is to be a patient. And the problem with us, with the doctors, the reason why we lack empathy is because we haven't been taught or we haven't had a chance to experience what the patient experience is like. And I think once we do that, once we put ourselves into the shoes of the patient, we'll be able to empathize with them better. And I hope that would transform the way we actually approach patients.
Very good thought. Okay, last question.
I just wanted to say, patient advocacy is very good. But can we have something like report cards for the hospital itself, which can provide enough information to the patient and he can take his own decisions? Along with advocacy, having report cards from the hospital. That will help in two ways. It will not only give information to the patient, but it will create competition to strive for the best and have efficiency in the system.
You're absolutely right, and it will happen. Like Dheeraj said, openness and transparency is a matter of time. The problem with a lot of these things is doctors, I think it will happen.
I think we'll leave it at lunch. I'd like to call upon Dr. Anjali Malpani for the vote of thanks.
I think we've heard a lot about patient advocacy. We've heard about the social media, the digital world, the patient's role, the doctor's role, and so on and so forth. And you all are half experts, but half experts. We hope that with this conference, you will be 3/4 experts, and then, of course, full experts when you actually become a patient advocate. What I would like to say is just a one line is, who is a patient advocate? You know, after all this, just one line. Who is a patient advocate? We've already learned. As the patient, as the name suggests, a medical advocate or a patient advocate doesn't need to be a doctor, doesn't need to be a medical person, or neither a lawyer. It's the person who takes care, a person who's compassionate, understanding, loving, good communication skills, and the most important, the person who has empathy. And that person is going to be you. That person must be already you, or is definitely going to be you at some point, because we are all going to fall sick, our loved ones are going to fall sick, and that is the time that we need the best medical care by being medical advocates. Thank you very much. I would like to thank everybody sitting outside for the last few months to do such a great job. I would like to thank Anju Chandiramani, who is the backbone of this conference. Without her, we wouldn't have been able to do this. And last but not the least, I would like to thank Rajesh, who of course, who was introduced to us as an entrepreneur, then became a patient. Now he's a friend. And even more now, we know him as the guy who is actively campaigning for Narendra Modi Namo. And he has actually been written about as the cyber warrior just a few days ago in the press, if you've read about it. So this is the guy, you've got to catch hold of him if you want a better future, not just from the health point of view, but from the country's point of view. Thank you very much, Rajesh, for being such a good coordinator, and not just coordinating, but keeping the audience awake, because otherwise they would have been, you know, in the afternoon siesta by now. And of course, for sticking to the time so that we can all go and have the hot snacks that are served. Please go ahead, have the snacks, and pick up a book on your way. Thank you very much.
Thank you, really appreciate it.